You're listening to the Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters Podcast, the place where faith, music, and life intersect. We exist to help Christian indie artists and songwriters just like you get songs heard. Hey, I'm here with my friend Ben Laine, coming to us live from New Hampshire. How you doing this morning, Ben?
Living the dream.
Awesome, man. That's great to hear. Well, I started, we connected on Instagram. Man, it was a good while ago now. And I just love seeing all the music you're putting out and love your soulful vibes and all the cool stuff you're putting out. So excited to have you and hear your story and stuff. And with that in mind, like, where did you kind of start? Where did music start for you as a kid?
So I started playing drums when I was about 4. And it just that was what my dad did. So I was like, I want to be like dad, So I picked up drums and then when I was about 5, I realized I could sing like the Jackson 5 and I got hooked and I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. So I started just kind of singing in church and we did a lot of church plays and whatever. And then at the age of, I think it was 8, I picked up saxophone in school. And this whole time, my mom was bugging me to play piano because she saw it and she wanted me to pursue it. But for some reason, I didn't like piano. It was at a Christmas party at my family's house. I was 9 years old and I had just started picking up piano and my uncle taught me Don't Stop Believing. And I was hooked. And it was kind of funny because you know how moms know best. And so I started picking up piano and finally I had a tool to actually write music with, and I kind of discovered this brand new avenue that I could go down besides just hitting some drums and whatever. So that kind of stemmed from just a couple of years of wanting to write music and whatever. But at that point, it finally, took off and I was able to actually do it and take action on it. And it was cool. I think I want to say I was 7 or 8. I was at a Jeremy Camp concert. It was my first concert ever, and I had to stand on the pews to see Jeremy Camp. I was so short. And I remember I turned to my mom and I said, "This is what I want to do." She was like, "Oh, you want to be a rock star?" And I said, "You know what? I want to touch people with music," because I saw Jeremy Camp not just singing and putting on a show, but he was ministering, and I saw the purpose behind it, And I was hooked. I told my mom, I said, that's what I want to do. And it's funny because looking back, I was, so young. I had no clue what I was talking about, but that just kind of was put on my heart. And I didn't know that before I was born, when my mom was pregnant with me, she used to pray over me and just pray that I would grow to be like a Chris Tomlin and a Rich Mullins. And so she told me that years later, and I'm like, wait a second, you've been praying this whole time. And but I'm glad she didn't tell me because I never had any, preconceived ideas of who I was supposed to be. She let me find it myself and she let God put it in me.
It sounds like you have just music in your DNA. I mean, from drums as a little guy to the saxophone, and then, it was just there. So are you self-taught in piano as well, or did you have lessons along the way?
Yeah. So it's always been self-taught. Saxophone is the only thing that, like I said, I learned in school and I played in the band.
Okay.
But I learned piano by ear. I had this little laminated chord sheet with every chord on it. And that was kind of my starting point. And from there, I just I grew. And it's funny because so in high school, my choir director used to be really good friends with Michael W. Smith. And she was from West Virginia. And I took her piano class and she used to get so mad at me. She's like, "You're just like Michael." And I'm like, "How am I just like Mike?" She said he plays by ear because she tried teaching him piano back when they were younger. And everything that she could read and play, he could hear and play. And so she's like, "I'm so jealous because you don't even have to read. You can play better than me by ear." And it was just this funny, little joke that we had. But yeah, I mean, I definitely learned saxophone music, which is, in the same format of piano music, but I never really took the time to discipline myself to learn reading piano because it was just too boring for me. It was trying to get myself to revert back to the original stages of learning the instrument. And I had already, surpassed that with my ear and knowledge. So it was kind of interesting. I never really learned, but, I could, I guess.
Yeah, the foundation is there. And man, I was just thinking like how cool it must have been for your mom on that Jeremy Camp night, when she'd been praying over you 10 years earlier, that would be something that you would maybe want to pursue. And then like for you to turn to her, I can only imagine like that answered prayer moment. There were still a lot of years ahead, but the fact that like God kind of started that process through her, the praying mother, over you then, and now to see, where you are now, that's amazing. So with that, like from that Jeremy Camp night, just a little kid, you felt that spark, like, hey, I want to touch people through music, in a big way, obviously sharing the gospel from the stage and stuff like that. So at what point did it kind of go from, I really love doing this, to like, man, this is what I'm going to do? And like, how did that start to kind of take shape along the way?
Man, I think it came with just the years of writing, through middle school and then on to high school. I remember singing my first song at church, and just kind of hearing the testimonies that came after and the people that were blessed by it. And I was, like I said, I was just hooked. I'm like, man, this is and my parents did such a good job at keeping me so grounded. They just would remind me daily, this is a gift of God, and he's given you this gift to use it for him. And not once did I kind of look at it any other way. I was always just, this is a gift that God has given me. And my mom would always remind me, especially, how we're supposed to be stewards of our gifts, and we're supposed to take care of them. And so that was kind of always my driving force. So then it was probably in high school, I had an iPhone 6, and I'm like, man, I want to record this music that I've been writing. I had well over 100 songs over the past, 5 or 6 years. And I'm like, I want to start recording. So I downloaded GarageBand, and I started recording my music on GarageBand on my iPhone 6. And I would take my Apple headphone microphone and go into my closet with a bunch of pillows and do the vocals. And then I'd, take out the little MIDI piano thing on the iPhone and just kind of tap away at the piano and the drum set. And so that's when it started to materialize, really. And I think it was 2017. So I was a junior in high school, and my mom sent my music to a radio station, a local radio station. And again, this was all the iPhone stuff. And this guy heard my music, and he was like, I want to check this kid out. So my parents invited him to a concert that we would have every Saturday at our church. And so he came, and he was like, so, what's taken you so long to kind of make this materialize? And I'm like, well, I'm just doing it on my phone. And he was kind of like, you're doing this on your iPhone? And I'm like, yeah. And, so he was kind of taken back by that. But that guy later turned into my manager. His name is Jim. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember this specifically. I was upstairs in my living room, and it was the first conversation we had on the phone. And he said, Ben, I want you to know right now, at the very beginning of this relationship, that I see that you have a gift, but beyond that, I see your heart for wanting to use that gift and get people saved. And he said, I'm on board. He said, I want to help you. I want to join you with this. And I never want a single cent put in my bank account because of it. I was like, okay, so I was kind of excited / wondering, who was this guy? What power does he have? But I later went on to realize that he had a very large amount of connections in the Northeast with the industry, which is funny because his full-time job is an engineer at the shipyard. So
wow.
That's like what he does. But he's just been so in contact with the Christian industry up in the Northeast. He's worked so many festivals and, worked with artists and whatever. So he kind of took, what I had been doing and showed me the actual industry side of it, So it was at that point, 2017, where he said, okay, we need to make this an album. You need to cut this and release it. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? He said, just worry about the recording, get it to me, and I'll take care of the rest. I said, okay. So I recorded my 9-song Brighter Day album. I finished it on my phone, and I sent it to him, and it materialized into CDs and put it out on iTunes and Spotify and whatever. And so that was I would say the actual beginning of me actually pursuing this.
So that's amazing. Recording. So you were recorded all that stuff with like just the Apple like microphone basically thing, like no external. So super like you have it literally. Everyone listening has the same gear in their pocket probably right now, or they're listening to this on the same recording studio you use for that 9-song album.
If not better, because that was the 2017 version.
Man, that's amazing. So. Okay, so you got that out there, and then what did he do with it? You know, that's what he said. You get him the music, then. So what did he do with it? How did it materialize? 'Cause I know that tours and stuff came, you know, in the future. So I'm excited to hear how we got there.
Yeah. So he basically just said, Ben, you have this music, you have this gift, but all you've been doing with it is singing in your church. And he said, I know that you want more from it, and I know that God has more for it. So he got me to finish the 9 songs, and he started instantly cranking out CDs. And then he put, I think, 2 of them on his radio station. They started to really get noticed by just people in the area. I mean, it's a small town radio station. It's nothing huge, but a lot of Christians in our area listen to it. I mean, they really like it. So he started doing that. And finally, when we had a CD, we had something to present to people, you know? And so again, going back to the connections that he had made with a lot of concert promoters and bands, he just kind of started reaching out, and he just basically introduced me as this kid that, you know, God's gifted and wants to go on tour and whatever. So it started out with me just doing stagehand work. Since then, I've done stagehand work and been on tour with Michael W. Smith and Casting Crowns and Zach Williams. And I mean, you name it, I've most likely met and worked with them. So he kind of told me, he said, Ben, I know these promoters and I know how they work. And he said, all you have to do is just prove to them that you are worth something to them beyond your music. And he would keep me grounded in a sense of, yes, God has given you this gift. Yes, you want to get people saved. Yes, there's, you know, a spiritual force behind it, but there's also reality. And the reality is you can't just go on a tour without, you know, having paid your dues. And so I learned that quickly. And with that, I started working on these tours and whatever. And that's when it came spring of 2017. I went on tour with this band, Carrollton. And that was my first ever tour. And I sold CDs.
So was that like in the Northeast? Did you jump on a leg of the tour, or was it like a full experience? Yeah.
So I basically just jumped on their Northeast portion of the tour and did some nights in just the New England states. So Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, just kind of joined them with that. And that was kind of a test run. It was kind of, okay, how is this kid on tour and what, you know, so I kind of made sure to establish myself as not somebody that would just sit around until they get on stage. So I became very active within the tech community and the lighting guys and the sound guys and all of those, and just kind of made sure that, first off, I learned from them as much as possible, but also I made sure they knew that I was always there for them to gain help from. So I think, you know, the promoters started to quickly see that, and they saw that, okay, this isn't just a kid that wants to be on stage. He wants to see the whole production go forward. They started to just kind of recognize that, and it gained me a certain amount of respect out of them, which was exactly what Jim had kind of set me up for.
So you got all this experience, you know, but you're not just hanging out, you know, quote unquote, being a rock star. You know, you're serving, you're adding value, and you're gleaning along the way. So after that first tour, like what happened next? What, you know, you learned a ton, you got some probably great connections and just stage time. And you kind of got to start doing that thing that you saw Jeremy Camp do, that you felt so inclined to want to be able to do later for yourself. So, you know, what happened next?
So yeah, that spring was with Carrollton and Cloverton. So 2 separate tours. Cloverton, they had a hit a little while back.
Beautiful, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
They played down here at our church one time.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of connected through that, and it's funny. I'm still friends with the guy who was doing sound on that tour. His name is Santiago, and he lives right outside Orlando. And
Awesome.
yeah, he does. Now he's doing very, very big shows. But yeah, so from that point, I just kind of remained active. Whenever there was a show in town, I would go and help out. And I loved it. I mean, I've kind of got a place in my heart for the tech guys. Just because my best friend, George, he owns 2 tech companies. The kid's 19 and I won't tell you how much he's making, but he's doing really well. And so him and I, we've been best friends since elementary school. And so we really connected with his love for the tech side of things and my love for the music side of things. And so I always, respected them. And I knew that they didn't normally gain the respect that they deserved because they kind of, their job is to be in the background, their job is to make everything look and sound great. But other than that, don't let us see you, kind of thing. And so I've always had a soft spot in my heart for that. So I was living the dream when I would, was asked to help out with an Unspoken tour or Zach Williams or, these guys that I had listened to on the radio my whole life. And now I'm setting up their drums,
So cool.
So yeah, I kind of filled my time with that. And then it was that following year was kind of when I established myself with other promoters. And I went on another tour that spring in 2018. But it was that summer of 2018 when I had started singing at my festivals up in New England. And so I think that summer I did 3 or 4 festivals. And that was, again, all from making connections with promoters via helping out with their shows. So it worked. It worked.
Yeah. And so this whole time, were you starting to make new music on the iPhone, or like you were mainly focused on playing those 9 songs, or like what was that process like, your writing and recording side? Because I know you released a ton of music now, so I'm sure there's a process to that as well.
Yeah. So I think, it was 2018 where I released some small stuff on SoundCloud, and you can still dig it up, and it's it's not horrible. It's just very different. Because I was kind of, just experimenting with it, at that point. I told myself, if I'm going to have to get better at this, what better way than to just, make as many different sounds as possible, kind of thing. So I never really made more. Jim really felt strongly that I could ride on the music, that those 9 songs. And again, it did work well, because a few of them really took off in New England, and they started doing well. And he just said, listen, just ride on this, use this CD, use this music, and let's see how long we can ride it out for. So it was 2018. We both were kind of like, it was the end of 2018. And I was like, okay, I think it's about time I start thinking about another album. But I told him, I was like, I don't want to do the iPhone thing again. And I said, I want to get gear. And so we had planned this Christmas tour with Austin French. It was funny. We were at a music festival up in New York, and Jim just kind of approached Austin French, and he said, hey, how do you feel about going on tour with this kid? And he did it right when I was on stage, so he timed it perfectly. And he said, what do you think about doing a Christmas tour? Austin was all about it. At that point, he had maybe 1 hit on the radio. And so he said, yeah, man, just let me know. And so Jim pitched it to the promoter. He said, we'll take care of everything. We'll, take care of rooming and board and sound and lights and whatever. And let's try and make this work. So we got a hold of Austin's management, and they said yes. And so they agreed to doing a New England Christmas tour in December. It was like early December. So I told Jim, I said, okay, with this tour and in this audience, that will definitely be one of the larger audiences I've played for. I said, I think what I want to do is every night tell the audience that I want to record a new album, and let them know that I want to do it with studio gear, and just kind of say, hey, all of my merch proceeds will go to that. And so it was within 3 nights of that tour, I had raised more than enough to get everything that I use now.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was totally a God thing. I mean, like one lady she was up here working on plumbing right outside of Boston. She was like from Arkansas, and she just like walked up to me and handed me $500 in cash. And it was
Wow.
like, yeah, crazy stuff like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like she was in town and just heard about it kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So God totally blessed that. And I told Jim, I said, if I can get my hands on this gear, I promise you that I will learn how to use it to the fullest of my potential. And I always use this analogy with him. I said, Jim, I'll never tell you I'm good at basketball because I'm not good at basketball. But if I tell you that I can be good at something, I promise that I mean it, and I will drive to learn it and whatever. So that's when I got the gear, and into 2019 is when I started, messing around with that and basically establishing the idea of putting out a new album.
So is that, because I think the first song I was aware of you, like your music, was Honest, right?
Okay, yeah.
So that obviously came out of that learning, because I mean, you must have picked it up pretty quickly if you only got that stuff in 2019 and then you start releasing, music out, like, because I think that song came out right in the beginning of 2020, didn't it? Around that time?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. So it was, man, it's all a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the gear, and I just basically started messing around and just, like I said, I told myself I'm gonna learn it, and I'm gonna just go for it and see what comes from it. And so the whole point in me getting the gear was to release an album in 2019. So Jim would not let that up. He was like, all right, man, like you said that you were going to do that, so let's do it. And so I put all my time into recording this album. And once again, most of the songs were songs that I had started writing in middle school, because I had such a large collection of music that I had never done anything with. And so the process would be me running it past Jim and asking him, what he thought and whatever. And that's kind of where In My Mind came from. And it's funny because I was dead set on it being a summer album, so I wanted it done by June. So I had 5 months, basically 4 months to complete it. And it didn't happen. It was just mostly, because again, I was learning the equipment, but also I would, record a song and then look back and go, oh, I can do this instead, So yeah, it was supposed to come out in June, but it didn't end up coming out until August, and we worked it out perfectly where it came out the night that I was playing a festival. At my set at the festival, I was able to finally say, and it's so funny because we did an album release party in June, and I had CDs, and I sold them at that show, but it was like, yeah, I'm releasing an album, and then I didn't release it till 2 months thereafter, so it was just kind of basically a big learning curve of, okay, I can't be just rushing myself and whatever. But yeah, that came out in August, and I just kind of rode that until 2020. And then I was like, you know what, I need to, I did a Christmas thing. I did a Christmas EP that year too. And then right into 2020, I just I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to do another album, but I'm going to continue on this forming of my craft and just see what comes of it. And that's where Honest and a couple other songs came from this past year.
Yeah. And then you released quite a few songs right at the end of the year, right?
Yeah. So I think it's funny. I'm literally looking at it on Spotify. That's how good my memory is. I released 7 songs throughout the year, and then I got COVID in November, and I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going to be in my house and not be productive, So my original idea was to record a worship EP. I was going to do a 4 or 5 song worship EP, full originals, and just kind of make it an acoustic type deal. But man, it was probably 1 hour into trying to write a song. I just knew it wasn't going to happen because the fatigue was just like, it was, I can't explain it, but the best way to explain it was I didn't really want to do anything physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Like I just wanted to be there, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
So I quickly made the decision because I knew I didn't have a lot of time. The year was wrapping up, and I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going to be able to actually put myself into a worship EP that is worth putting out there. Because I can't just write songs just to write songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I truly believe that every song I want to put out there has a meaning behind it. So I quickly made the decision, okay, scrap the worship EP. What else could I do? And then I was like, I could do covers, quarantine covers.
Yeah.
And so I kind of started brainstorming, you know, what songs would be cool and whatever. That idea stemmed from, I just kind of covered a Post Malone song and put it on Instagram, and it got a lot of really good response. And I was like, huh. So I just kind of took that idea, ran with it. And so within those 2 weeks, I recorded those songs and I released them the following weeks up until Christmas time.
And so you're handling, like, Jim is management, more tour stuff. So you're handling all the recording stuff yourself, and then also you're uploading it to distribution and doing all the artwork and everything. You're handling all that.
So he mostly does the uploading.
Okay.
Only because he's kind of the last say, I guess, per se.
Yeah.
And so I handle everything up until you need to upload it to, you know, whether we use DistroKid or whoever it might be. So artwork, music, everything, producing, mixing, compressing, all of that is just completely done here. And then I send it to Jim. He listens to it. And normally we take some time listening to the songs. He's got a little software too where he can do some compression and whatever. And so we'll kind of listen to it in our cars and on the speakers and on our phones and whatever. So yeah, I handle all of the production of it. And then I send it in and he sends it to DistroKid and Spotify for artists and all of that fun stuff.
You know, it's so helpful to have that accountability, that team. And since you guys obviously have a dynamic that works great, I mean, you know, because like as artists, it's easy to be, you know, off in the stratosphere of like, man, this is the greatest song I ever heard in my life. And then you send it to someone else, you're like, I don't know so much about this one. I get where you're going, you know, so like to have that sounding board obviously has been a great help, you know, for you on the journey. So, you know, with that in mind, like, what's a piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self, kind of maybe as you're getting started, you had all the songs or whatever it might be along the journey, or even something now that's just been resonating with you? You know, we were kind of talking about a few things before we started recording too. So any of that kind of stuff is, you know, you think that it's just something that you're just resonating on or has helped you along your way?
I would say the biggest thing would be to just not have expectations and remember why you're doing it. There was a few times on this journey that I had these expectations that were just nowhere close to reality. And, you know, we learn through what we go through and we grow and whatever. But if I could tell my younger self to not have those expectations, it would just be a lot smoother of a ride as far as where my focus lies.
Man, that's so good. And, you know, ultimately that's letting God kind of do what he's going to do. And I found too, like, if I can, I mean, we plan, you know, we have goals, we set out targets and things for sure. But it's like, if I can predict the outcome, then that means God wasn't even in it, you know, a lot of times, you know, that was just all me. And it's usually pretty lame, you know, like,
Amen.
So I love that idea that like, you don't have expectations because you're not like, hey, this is how it should go or else it's a failure or it's a success. You're just like, hey, I feel led to do this and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of freedom in that, right?
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing. Like I said, growing up, my parents made sure to instill in me why I was doing this, you know, and Jim is the same way. Just remember why you're doing this. Remember the purpose behind this. And he's more of a realist to the point where, and that just comes from his knowledge, you know, he just, okay, so there's a business side of it and we need to play that in order for it to go ahead. But always keep in mind the actual reason you're doing it and the purpose and the end goal, you know, which is to save people, you know, to give people hope and light and give them the opportunity to experience a love that can only come from our Creator. And so I can fully, truthfully say that I would definitely not be where I am right now if I didn't have my parents instilling that mindset in me, because they just really made sure to take it seriously, and to just go, listen, this is, and like I said earlier, my mom always reminds me, you got to be a steward of your gift. You got to take care of it, because it's something to be taken seriously in the kingdom of heaven.
That's straight up wisdom, like just that idea of like, it's not, it's a gift, and it's not something to be taken for granted. And a big thing too. And I think this is what your parents, that's what I'm like, it's not to be exploited,
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't just get it and just like, look at me. It's like, hey, look at God. Like, I remember I used to pray this all the time before we do like worship. It's like, God, let us be mirrors of your light. Like, obviously we're on stage. Obviously the world's dynamic says the dude or the lady on stage is the focal point and they're whatever. But like in our context, it's so weird, because humbling yourself in the position to where most people are like godlike, like huge stars or whatever. Like, so that's such a tension, and I love that they instilled that so deeply in you. And obviously like it's been a part of you for this whole time and will continue to be. So that's amazing, man. It's admirable. So, with that, and it's kind of funny as I was formulating this in my mind, like, not because you have expectations for it, but like, what are your ideas, hopes, dreams, aspirations for this new year? Now that we've had this wild 2020, like musically, like what do you kind of have in store and thought for this new year?
So, yeah, that's a loaded. Are you sure? No, I'm kidding. 2020 was basically a big experiment, I would say. In the fact where Jim and I both were learning, what it looks like to release music and what it looks like to get that music to a point of success. So we basically came to the final idea that albums are just out the door. Can a star like Taylor Swift release an album? Absolutely, 100%.
Sure.
And will it do well? 100. I mean, she did last year, 2 of them, and it did very well. But at this point in my career, I told Jim, I want to enter into 2021 with the driving force not being the people that already know my music, but being the people that don't know my music. And in doing so, with the algorithms and just how music works nowadays, you can't just release an album a year and expect it to do well at this stage. Again, could Bruno Mars? Absolutely. And they do,
Mm-hmm.
But even Justin Bieber, when's his new album coming out? Who knows? But he's recorded 4 incredible singles within the last couple months, Yeah. And so I think, truthfully, I think this is the direction that the industry is going in, because, and it's all, I think, it's all with thanks to social media and just electronics in general. I mean, right now the biggest social media I would say is TikTok. And the longest video you'll find is 60 seconds, and if your attention isn't grabbed within the first 5 seconds, you're just scrolling past,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that because of that and the way that social media and electronics in general have shaped our, I don't want to say our nation, because that just sounds weird, but
Culture.
Yeah, culture, exactly. That is kind of given us the perspective of just kind of stepping back and going, okay, how can we capture that spirit and put it into music release? And so I had a full album planned out, and it's still going to be, in the end, it's going to be an album, but we decided, okay, how can we capitalize on that in a sense where we are given multiple opportunities for new people to hear this music? And so Jim had the idea of releasing a new song every other week. And what he said was, because I'm sure you know this, so I guess this is for the listener, if you want to send in a song to Spotify's producers in hopes that it makes it on a solid playlist, you need at least give it 3 or 4 weeks for it to kind of be curated and sent in. So what Jim said was, okay, what we'll do is every 4 weeks, we'll take one of the songs that we feel, could do really well, and we'll put it in the system and send it to producers and whatever. And then every 4 weeks, between those 4 weeks, we'll choose the songs that, yeah, they're good. They're great songs, but we just can't see them being something that takes this to the next level. And so that's kind of where our decision came from. I did the math, and I need 23 songs, and I want to say 28 or 29 now. So
Wow.
we're on track. I just have to, finish recording and whatever. But yeah, so that's what we're going to do is like January 29th will be the first release. So that'll be one that we push, right? And that'll be one that, we really kind of put in the system to do well. And then February 12th will be, a great song, but not one that we see doing as well, kind of thing. So we'll just kind of continue that throughout the year, and just because the way that we look at it is like a couple of the songs last year did really well as singles. You look back on Honest and just a few others, and I kind of did the math, and I said, okay, I released 7 songs, and 3 of them, if not maybe 2 of them, did really well. So what if we expanded that math to 23 songs, So that's kind of how we are approaching it. It's just single by single and whatever. And in the end, again, it'll materialize into an EP or an album kind of thing.
Right.
When you look at my Spotify account, it's not going to be 23 singles,
Right.
That's busy. But, 10 or 11 of them will be on an album, and 4 of them will be on an EP kind of thing. So we're kind of, again, feeling it out and seeing what works best. But right now, we really strongly feel that singles is just the way to go.
Man, I totally agree. I've heard it I think they call it the waterfall release strategy, where it's like, the drip. You just kind of let them go one by one. And I love just the intentionality behind that. And, it can be hard because a lot of people be like, well, all of my songs are my kids. I love them all equally. But for you guys to actually take a hard look and say like, hey, these 12 or whatever are the ones that, have the best shot at commercial success ultimately, in that sense, because that's ultimately commercial is popular and that's what gets it to new people. So
yeah.
I love that. And then kind of filling in the middle. So you just have a constant stream I remember watching a video with Gary Vee, and he was like, if I was a hip hop artist, I'd release a song every single day. Because that's what makes the algorithm just go nuts, because there's so much activity. And of course, that's not necessarily possible, but like that's what he said. And so you guys are really coming at it strong. So I'm excited to see how that goes and follow along your journey. And sort of with that, like what's the best place, and I'll link all this stuff below, but what's the best way for people to kind of follow you, and where do you hang out social media wise?
So it's kind of a funny joke. I've always loved photography. So Instagram has always been my favorite. So Instagram, I would say, is where I'm most present. I'm currently taking a break from Instagram until my first release comes out. I try every winter to kind of take a break from social media and whatever, just kind of cleanse myself from all the stuff happening. So, but Instagram is, where I'm mostly active, and you'll find information as quickly as possible. And then there's Facebook, which, again, this is our joke. Jim is always on my butt about posting on Facebook because I'm just so horrible at it. I'm just to the point where now we share the account and he posts for me. It's bad. But so yeah, Instagram would be Ben_Laine, and then Facebook is Ben Laine Music. And then on top of that, they're just my name on Spotify and iTunes and all that fun stuff.
Cool. I'll make sure to link all that below. Yeah. And last thing too, is I always like to pray over everybody before we go. So I'm going to pray for you. God, thank you so much for Ben. Thank you so much for him following just the call in his life, God. And it's so amazing to think back of his mom praying over before he was even born that this would be a thing. And then just to look back in his journey and to see that, even the piano teacher saying, hey, you remind me of Michael W. Smith, and hey, all these things that kind of all point to him being exactly where you want him to be, God. And also with his partnership with Jim and the exciting stuff that they're doing and they're formulating and thinking about ultimately at the end of the day, just to build your kingdom here, and as he shares the gospel through his songs, God, just let that go out further than he or Jim could even plan with their no expectations, just to go out there and just to raise people up from the dead, God, and just show people that there's a better way, even in the midst of the world and everything happening, God, that that you are above it all. You rule and reign over it and have a purpose and a plan for all of it, God. So we thank you for Ben. We thank you for just extra skill, extra creativity, extra inspiration as he dives into all this music, God, that it's the best stuff that he's ever created, God, and it's all for you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, man.
We want to help reach as many Christian indie artists and songwriters as possible, and one way we can do that is with your help. So if you could take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes, that would be so appreciated. This is how the iTunes algorithm will push this content out to more and more Christian indie artists and songwriters. So like I said, if you could just take a couple seconds, leave us a review, that would be so awesome, means so much to us, and we would really appreciate it.